went to CyberArts and had a rather life-changing experience. I came back on a Monday night. That Monday night was a NEMUS meeting. Came in here, there's probably 7 people here. And we had Mike Stein, who we should have called, was the speaker last month. And I was saying, wow, I've got all these cool things to say, but he was the speaker last month, so I didn't want to step on him. So I said, well, why don't you come back next month? Okay, so I did that, and then over the course of the month, it was like, I had some ideas, and said, so why don't you be president? No, well, okay, it depends. There's a lot of things that are possible now that need to happen in the area, and I'm hoping that if we can take this group to those places, there's some things that can happen. I'll get into that. Mainly, first thing that I like to have us do is go around and say who we are and where we're from and what our main interest is. Because that way, afterwards, if you hear somebody that has an interest that's similar to yours, you can network with them. Gee, what an idea. Trying to get, let me jump ahead. I'm going to jump all around. I don't do public speaking often, so I'm going to practice on you guys. One of the things I'd like to do here is get specialists in their fields in a room with other specialists in other fields and have an educational system occur where everyone can learn from everybody. Because as we get into higher technologies, you have to specialize a lot more. And as you specialize a lot more, obviously you don't see the other things around so much. So we have a lot that we can learn from each other. So that didn't come out exactly the way I rehearsed it, but none of this is. I'm Steve Turnage. I work at Rain Corporation. I have a band called the Ultraviolet Catastrophe. I'm excited about the present and where we're at. I'm excited about technologies that are occurring, that are getting to become real. That once you work in these new technologies, the world sort of grows up around you rather than following. Whatever. Anyway, that's where I'm from. That's where I'm at. John, why don't you go down there?
I'm John Hokinson. I'm the person that heads the nasal area that's playing over there. And my interests, I guess, lie in writing and music production, more so than performing.
I'm Bob Moses, and I work with him. And I'm wearing a lot of hats right now. I'm doing a column for Mix Magazine. I'm mixing at backstage and doing a standards thing with the Art Engineering Society that deals with all this technology that we'll get into and design MIDIBirds and that kind of stuff.
My name's Garrett Kobar, and I used to do digital music, and primarily what sustains me now is doing HyperCard or other multimedia stuff, and just out of general interest.
Ruben Jeffries. At the moment, I'm working as a drafter for the Boeing Company. My main interest is computer modeling and animation using Macintosh. Distribution systems, database systems, anything that can get a message across in visual form, visual and text and music, I'm interested in.
My name's Einer Ask, and I'm in the band with Steve, Ultraviolet Catastrophe, and another band called Zane. I just do the music thing.
My name's Gordon Raphael. I'm in a band called Sky Christ Mary, and I'm very interested in analog synthesizers and 1960s fuzz boxes.
My name is Tony Baird. I'm a performer, writer, and all-around musician, but I'm into music production. That's my thing, and I'm just into what's happening here.
Any other band called?
A band called Tony Baird.
No. Oh, is it called Tony Baird now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And working with a company called MIDIBird.
Yes.
Okay, which does great like commercial spots for all of you corporate types that have commercials too.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
It was Bob Rogers. I just happened to come across your ad in the computer shopper
Oh.
and thought I'd just pop by.
I didn't know there was an ad in the computer shopper.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's a
Effective.
pretty, you know,
Good. You might be at the wrong meeting, but hopefully you'll be
Music?
okay. Yeah.
Saying about that.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I have had a home studio for about 5 years, and just I do it on my own.
Great. Excellent. Well,
Mark Taylor, main instrument is guitar, but I have a 4-track studio at home with a MIDI setup also. Do mostly original music.
And I'm Joel Collin. I work at the User Interface Technology Lab at UW, and I'm not an engineer there. I work on displays and also interested in photography. I want to start up one business.
I'm Brian Hart. I work at St. Joe Solarworks, and I do 3D sound in virtual environments. I'm interested in performance and
VR being virtual reality. Does everyone know the buzzword? No. VR. Okay, good. This is one of the rules we'll have here is that it's twofold. If anyone says a buzzword that someone doesn't understand, a gong. Yeah, you have to take a drink. That's right. So you were going to bring the drinks to no. Okay. And the second is well, trying to find things, and if anybody doesn't know what's going on, because that's the vision I have for this. I'm going to break in with more ads here. The vision I have for this is people learning how to be cyber artists, which involves everything that's happening. Let me give a religious statement. No, not really religious. A philosophical statement that came up. I've been thinking a lot this month on what cyber art is, because I went to CyberArts and it seemed like a buzzword at the time. But when I actually went through it, it was really exciting. And what a cyber artist is, in my opinion, a cyber artist is a local universe problem solver. That's a Buckminster Fuller term. That basically, if you see a problem around you, you fix it. Okay. It stays aware of new technologies. Does not take the present for granted because we're living in the future. There's so many things happening right now that it's time to be, and things that we don't know about, which is one of the reasons I think this group will work. Becomes expert at tools already at hand, because there have been lots of things, like the studios that we have, and people that say, I need the next new thing, next new thing, next new thing, maybe aren't getting so deeply into the thing they already have to be able to get the full use out of it. Desires to share information, because essentially it's about communication, right? Maintains a mental state of ignorance. That's sort of a questionable one to some people until it's just a matter of, we all, as we get more specialized, it shows the more we don't know, the more and more we become ignorant. And if we realize that, then we're able to accept information in a much more pleasant fashion, rather than saying, oh, did you hear about thus and such? Oh yeah, I know all about thus and such. Oh yeah, so that's a block. Okay. Seeks and learns new forms of communication. Now, that's one that hits me, because in the last week, I've found, thanks to these gentlemen here who kicked me a little bit, which is nice, welcome. Come in, please.
I'm here.
Good. What's your name?
Bob.
This is Bob. Bob, this is
How do you do? How do you do?
We're in the, actually, if you sit here or there, we haven't.
Next to John here.
Okay, sit next to John. We haven't gotten that far in the introductions yet, so you'll be able to deal with that. Where was I? Communication. Okay, thanks to these people, I've gotten hooked up with internet and CompuServe in the last. I've been hooked up to CompuServe, but in the last week, I've got some offline navigators that you go into while you're not connected. It calls up for you, gets down all the information you need. You go through that information, say, okay, I want this, 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 and this. It goes up, gets just that information, and you say, okay, I want this and that and that out of that, and it keeps going through passes, and you're online for a very short amount of time, and that's what costs money. And you get a very good filter of what's up there, because you're not, every minute that you're going waiting to go to forum to forum, trying to figure out how the thing works, you're not ticking clockwork with the bucks. So that just, it was a lever needed to open this thing up like a geode, and you got these gems in there. One more point on that is internet. Something I just found out about lately is that network of networks. It has email, which is electronic mail people can send to each other if they're on a network that's connected to internet. The amount of email that goes up is about 38 meg per day. And that's 8 books. It's a lot of books. And so there's information there. The information, what you care about, what is applying to you right now, in a matter of 8 books, I mean, there's probably 3 paragraphs that are vital to what you're doing right now. But to get those 3 paragraphs to read the 8 books, geez, I don't know. So the key becomes being able to filter the signal from the noise. The signal is yours, the information you're looking for. Okay, is willing to add new dimensions to their work. And that's like a video artist wanting sound, a sound artist working for video and sound artist working for virtual reality artists working with holography, working with whatever the next thing is. That's one of the things we're learning about the future is that you can't take it. The thing that makes it the future is you don't know what it is yet. So if you have a really plastic method of expanding and seeing what's going to come in, then you win. Okay, I was talking to Craig Anderton today, and I told him about this. I said, is there anything you'd add to that? He goes, a CyberArtist can separate hype from reality. And there's a lot of hype in a lot of different fields right now that the reality does not reflect yet. It's more just, keep on, come on, we'll do it. Unfortunately, that doesn't make for a very good product at this point. Okay, that was my preaching for that time. We'll get to sort of a free-form situation. We got to Craig.
My name is Craig Rosenberg. I'm at the University of Washington at the Human Factors Lab. I'm interested in virtual reality, 3D sound, computer animation, digital recording, performance in VR, drums, bass, keyboards.
So very limited thing.
Yeah.
We'll try and spread you out a bit.
And especially mappings between sound and graphics, using MIDI to trigger computer graphics, so a musician can paint simultaneously.
Well, during the performance, in other words, the
Yeah.
performance of the music actually
That's like a
creates
visualizing tool.
the graphic.
And paint really isn't the right word because it's a 3D sort of instantiation. Building.
Instantiation? Is that, now did you understand that word? Because I did.
I missed about a bunch of these.
Okay,
3D
please.
sound, virtual reality, holography, this is all new.
Okay, good. Let's go through these. This is part of it. There's, 3D sound is right now semi-achieved through binaural recording, where what you're hearing right now is 3D sound. You hear me coming from the behind. Say something, will you, Joel?
Something with each other?
You heard that from behind you. Now 3D sound is being able to generate that without having him there. Okay, being able to have the headphones on. One of the DSP processes we're working on is at Rain will hopefully be a generator that for each sound. Okay, virtual reality. This gets into virtual reality for a second. Virtual reality is. I don't want to bring up the lawnmower man. That's a current thing. That's a movie. Why? Yeah. That's a talk we'll hold for later. It's where you have two generally, and these guys are the experts. So if I get it wrong, go ahead. You have two video screens in front of your eyes, where like my glasses would be, and each is presented with a slightly different scene, so you get parallax, so you have a depth of vision. So instead of real reality, you have a virtual reality. Looking in a mirror is a virtual reality. That person that you see on the other side of the glass is not there. It's a virtual. But that's a very good form of virtual reality, because you can really can't recognize it from the real thing. That's what tricks with mirrors are. Essentially, regular virtual reality with tricks with mirrors. You can just put on sunglasses and you see whatever. This is something that has lots of hype to it too, eventually. Oh, good. Yeah, the noisy thing.
Every 30 seconds, yeah.
That was now in virtual reality. One of the things to get the suspension of disbelief down. Thank you very much. To get the suspension of disbelief when you're looking at this stuff is that if you see something in this reality, like a bunny rabbit or a bird flying around, you'd like to hear the tweeting. Bunny rabbits don't make sounds, that's why I changed. You'd like to hear the bird tweeting as it flies around. Now, in order to get the direction coming from the object that you're seeing, the sound coming from there. Then you need 3D sound and go through one of these DSP processors that figures out the shape of your, not figures out the shape of your ear, but will, can you guys help me? No. Through a certain series of steps, we'll be able to tell you, like, for instance, there's where the sound comes directly in this ear, and you have a head shadow, and then you have this ear, the sound coming around, so there's a little delay, and there's a little bit of a level drop, and all those details that make 3D sound, which is still in the future. There's some current things that are working rather nicely, but those details have to be worked out. That's 3D sound in virtual reality a lot. The last one? Holography. Holography is a, I'll show you a hologram. One of the materials we got had what is called a white light hologram that you might have seen on a National Geographic or.
You're also on your credit card.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the Visa. Here, this is. There we go. This is. Okay. Right. So holography is generating these and going into steel screens. What's this? Pardon me? Yeah, that's right. You can see it in a certain one. So that clears up, and this is good because I'm sure that everyone can learn from all this. Okay, so there. Now, what was the word that you used? You have to define it.
Instantiation. Oh, instantiation.
Yes, please.
Instantiation just means to place something or to have it appear at a certain point. So if I instantiate this pencil at this point in the room, it just pops there.
Like there's an instance of it there? Is it like
It's instancing.
It's instancing, okay. You create something. So when you're in virtual reality and you instantiate a pencil, it becomes. Okay, it happens. Cool. All right, we're already learning. I'm learning. That's what you make. Gordon!
Every time they said where they work out to you, the heater went on. So is it human faculties?
Yeah.
It's like human lab.
It's a human lab, that's right.
There's two of them.
That's what happened. Okay. It's the Human Interface Technology Lab.
Hit lab.
Or hit lab.
Greg was saying he's from the Human Factors Lab.
So that's
So that's confusing.
Which is close by.
Oh,
What
I'm
department
going
is that, like physics or music or what is it?
Mechanical engineering and Washington Technology Center.
Washington Technology Center.
Well, that's one of the
glued on to the university to transfer technology out to industry. It's not really part of the department.
Is it a new development?
Uses through the
last
2 years.
Looks like a GUI.
Okay, did everyone get their questions answered that time?
Yes. I'm Jeff Kodak, and I program general purpose computers to help the more creatively inclined to get to their realities, to get their music out, to get their VRs out. Right now I work at HitLab, program VR.
My name is Colin Bricken, and I work at the HitLab, and I think your definition works pretty well. I'm a CyberArtist at HitLab.
Excellent.
My name is Alan Claxton. I work with Steve Turnage and Bob Moses, and I'm currently specializing in electroacoustical sound production. Speaker design.
Yeah, I was going to. You're graduating in jargon.
Yes, and I'm just here out of general interest because I think what Steve has been talking about, Steve Turnage has been talking about, is very interesting, and I think it can take things farther than they are currently.
My name's John Riley, and I'm in Advanced Health System 7, and if I won the lotto, like Wednesday or Saturday or something, I would be doing experimental music and just get my hands on anything I could, and that's why I'm here.
I'm hoarse today, so can't start to talk. My name's Nicole Rablois, and I'm a musician and composer. I compose mostly new age and jazz type of music, and I've been working with MIDI for over the past year and a half or so, and just want to learn more about coordinating it with visual art.
I'm Seth Pennington. I'm into synthesizers, weird sounds, anything really strange.
So now, sure. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm shocked. There's a parking place right down there in front.
I got it. That's because you were late. See, you were on time. Anyway, my
band in the South End called Bobby and the Jets, so I obviously look like Peter Townsend, so I no, I do Elton John. And I've been coming to NEMUS for about, what, a year now? Off and on. I like learning about MIDI products and the new stuff that people like you come and fill us in on. That's why I keep coming back.
Okay, well, and hopefully we'll be all hearing a lot about new products constantly, because one of the reasons for this meeting is that products are being introduced at an accelerating rate, and the technology level of the products are accelerating at the same time. And pretty soon, the future shock is going to set in to those who are not informed on the whole situation, which is very few people are informed on the whole situation, is going to be pretty intense and almost paralyzing. And there's also going to be a problem foreseen of the knowledge rich and the knowledge poor, information gathering abilities. So in the local universe problem solver thing, which is number one, is the things that we learn here, we can tell those around us and sort of be a future shock absorber for those around us.
And we can get squished.
Well, but then you rebound, you just keep the ride sort of a little softer than just, hitting a rock and clipping off the rope. But those are some of the things. Should I actually get into the meat of the thing now, of showing what it... Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay, introductions are over. CyberArts went down on Thursday before Halloween. Went into the show floor. They had virtual reality games, which are at bars around in a couple places, sort of low-end kind of thing. They had a Mandala System, which has a camera shooting at you and a projection TV screen, and you are superimposed in the TV screen with an Amiga display of objects. And your superimposed figure can touch the objects and generate events. And it can generate MIDI events, or for instance, there can be little notes around, you touch it, and a MIDI event gets triggered.
Instantiate.
You can instantiate MIDI through this, or any other things. And what they had going was two faces, and one says "touch my lips," and you figure it out, and it goes down. And do you want to live here forever, or do you want to go and be boring? And you say, and it brought you down a little tour. It was more just a demo thing. That was one of the things. That night there was a interactive multimedia show that didn't really work, but the important thing was that before the show, Todd Rundgren was there, and he had his latest CD with him. And his latest CD is being produced two ways. One as a CD as we all know it, that goes from the start to the end and is the same every time that we play it. The other is as an interactive CD, where I think it's for CDI, that you generate what he called vectors of rhythm and feel and vocal aspects of it, and it puts the songs together in different ways every time. And you can save the way that it puts the song together, and so you can hear it that way over and over if you want to. So you can save several different aspects of the performance. What he was saying was that in order to compose for this kind of music, you have to have short, 8-bar fragments that can be placed in any direction. So the words become a little bit more fluent. Please.
I was just curious, where does it get saved to? Is this Orange Book standard CD-ROM?
No, I think it was CDI. But where does it get saved to is a good question. He didn't go into detail. He had a short amount of time. He was working off an Amiga at the time. So I'm not sure how it's going to process in. And
Is there CDIs?
oh, yeah, thank you very much. CDI is CD Interactive, which is a Philips thing that you've seen a lot of. If you watch television, and some people don't, and I don't blame you. There have been a lot of ads lately with people morphing into CDs. Morphing is changing from one state to another state. Usually. Short for metamorphosis. Yeah. It's like Terminator 2 had one of the big impacts on that. But CDI has, I was actually sold on it this time when I was down because of one particular product. There's a guitar school CDI that has pictures of everybody's guitars, that you can pull up. You've got a thumbstick, a joystick that will, on your TV screen, your stereo, it's hooked up to that. You can go into different areas. One of them was famous guitars and who they were, and you could hear snippets of it. One area was Guitar School, where it had a video picture in the corner that showed what the hand was doing. You could speed that up or slow it down. It had staff and tabulature on the screen at the same time. And you can practice that way. Another section of it was duets, where you get this heavy metal rock lead from Jimi Hendrix that you're doing part 2 of. So you play along with it. It shows tab and staff as it's going along with pictures of how your fingers are supposed to go. And it was really intense. I said, wow, okay, this is cool. You can sit down and not be embarrassed, become guitar whiz, you lose the guruship of having someone actually teach you. But these people that create it are teaching it. What that says for us is that these discs need to be made, need to be programmed by people. The music on them needs to be made by some people. And then that becomes an opportunity for all of us as a business in the future, as composers and as electronic musicians. Jumping a little bit, there's a guy from Sega who programs the CD-ROMs there. CD read-only memory. The Sega Genesis game system have coming with them, so it's $300 for the CD-ROM system. And it has MIDI on it, and it has music along with the video games. And he's saying that anyone that knows MIDI is just hot in demand at these places because they didn't really know. When he came up and said, I know MIDI, goes, great, go to work. And so there's other business opportunities for electronic musicians being electronic musicians instead of electronic musicians being like salesmen.
What kind of applications of MIDI are they looking for exactly? Making little sequences to go along with the parts of the game.
Exactly.
Like that?
That's one of the major parts. They're making little sequences that.
Think about being freed up from a 4-minute cycle at a time. Have something really cool you can play that's really only good for 20 seconds.
Right. Well, Jeopardy got really well with da 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 da. They didn't have to go very long. So that was the Todd Rundgren thing was very cool. Another thing about CDI is that they had a photo CD. Kodak has a new process out called Photo CD that stores digital images of your photographs at. I should take better notes, but I'll just tell you lies because you don't know. You won't. Takes them at different resolutions. So there's a television resolution it's saved at, so you can go through your photos in television. And then there's 4 times that, 4 times that, and 4 times that again for the actual pictures. And the pictures that come out are 35mm quality. That you can get 100 pictures on a disc. And
I think maybe with the Nikon unit, you can, which is about 25,000, you can get 35mm quality. But I don't think the Kodak one.
Yes,
See, a lot.
Yes, it does.
They're both that?
It's 3,000 lines by 2,000 lines resolution, which is better than anything that you can print on a magazine.
And that's why they have several different. They have several different files for the same thing.
What's the color depth? Yeah, is that
20? It is 24-bit depth. What you're doing is taking your 35mm shots with a standard camera, and you take it to Kodak, and when they develop it, they just run it through an optical reader, a very high-speed optical reader.
They scan it after they develop it.
Yes.
One of the other things that was shown by the Kodak guy while he was there is that there's movies, 35mm movies, they have a full scanning, digital mess with it system, and then film recorder again. all the way around. Just came out that is no loss or no generation loss. So that's happening. There was all these exhibits, which was question? Okay. Sir.
I'd like to put in one more thing about the photo CDs. It's $20 or 20 shots. It's very inexpensive.
What was that?
$20 for a roll of 20 shots on 35 millimeter. It's $20 to get those pressed to the CD. So as long as you have a computer or some kind of reader that can read the photo CD, it comes right out.
$20 for one of a kind.
It's also
Yes.
one other really important thing with it in the future too is that Apple in about 6 months is adding to their System 7 as a standard too. So they'll be able to use it in QuickTime release.
I presume you're gonna raise them and use them over again.
No, you cannot.
No, it's a
They're permanent.
Sir.
I was curious, what are we filming?
Well, me, I think. And that's just for like my wife who isn't here. You didn't really make a fool out of yourself, did you? Hi, Julie. How's it going?
No, I'm really here, no, that was cool.
That's right. That's right. Good. Yeah, we got some trust. Okay, so that was.
Do you have to carry a disk drive or is it stored on a disk in the camera?
No, you have to have a disk drive connected to a computer, a CD-ROM drive.
But when you're out photographing, do you
No,
carry
just
a
regular camera.
Standard 35 millimeter cameras, standard 35 millimeter film.
I see. I'm thinking of the digital cameras.
No.
Oh, no.
Cameras come anywhere near that, right?
No, digital
No, this
cameras.
resolution is much better than digital camera.
Is Kodak CD a regular CD-ROM standard or is it another?
It's proprietary.
It's an orphan. It's a extension to regular CD-ROM. A standard CD-ROM will read the first 20 shots. But after that, you need one of the newer ones that come out that's able to read multiple sessions. At the end of pressing the first 20 films, it says, okay, this is the end of the first 20. And the CDs that are out right now say, that's all I see. The next 20, the next 20 that get put on are put into different partitions. There's a new drive that Sony's come out with, a new drive that Toshiba's about to come out with that will read these. And new Macintosh 2VX with the CD-ROM drive already reads it.
Yeah, I was just introduced to a guy a couple of months ago who just sold the rights to Canon to a device that would take your negative, film negative, you slot it in your floppy drive size unit in your computer and it would scan it in. That was yay. Wow. More power to this next year.
What kind of resolution?
I think I heard 3,000 by 2,000. Correct, true color.
These are nice. These are nice.
That's not a cheap gadget.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet.
The curve. Once you make 10,000 of them, or no, 100,000 of them.
Well, it's actually more sprocket. The point is, it'll be that easy to use and accessible.
Okay. Cool. Next. Okay, that was photo CD.
One more question.
Sir.
3,000 by 2,000 by 24 bits of
A 40 megabyte file.
Is what?
40 megabytes.
That's compressed. That's highly compressed.
Yep.
Yeah, Kodak CDs are part of the compression scheme.
So it's just writes that to disk. That's really cool.
I've seen that's what they consider a poster size. It's, what is it, something like 18 by 22. I've seen that blown up 400 times. And the fineness of the lines in it is not as good as like a standard print that size, but it's passable.
It'll do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll go on. Later that evening, after we saw Todd, saw a SIGGRAPH reel, which is computer graphics. SIGGRAPH is special on graphics and computer graphics, and they have conventions and the like, and there's a reel of all the latest stuff, which I sort of collect. I collected earlier computer graphics on Laserdisc, but this was knockout, as each year is going to be, where I finally learned inside, never trust anything on video. Because in this, the most striking thing I saw was a graphic of an arm that panned down to another arm, which grabbed a hand, which panned over to another hand, etc. And it went through, it just, well, eventually.
Who's the artist?
I don't know. It was like 2 hours of, not that one, but 2 hours of different segments.
2 hours. Like the ant walking around the Moebius strip, that type of thing.
Walking around, pardon?
The Moebius strip.
Moebius strip, yeah, very similar. Okay, next morning, wake up with hangover. No, not really. Next morning, go in and Dominic Milano opens up, and Stewart Brand makes a keynote address, which was, I wanted to get a tape of it here, but I didn't get around to it eventually. But cassettes are available of all the sessions. There were 25 different sessions with 3 or 4 different specialists in each. His most striking thing to me, I put in the newsletter, is that working on the cutting edge of technology is all blade and no handle. Where, as you keep getting new things, you don't have a chance to get mature with it until the next new thing comes out. And then if you aren't on the next new thing, then you're not necessarily on the cutting edge of technology. You're working with technology that's a few months old. So there was a caution there that he gave out. One of the things he was saying, how also technology changes the art. And that's one of the things that we're dealing with here, is redefining the art. As an electronic musician, when I can give my niece a Casio with LFOs on it, and she can make better things than I was making, 7, 8 with my Art Odyssey, then I guess she's an electronic musician too, which is cool. But the depth that I want to go into is to add a new dimension to the art, And he used as an example painters in medieval time, and I'll probably get there's probably some expert in here that says, oh no, that wasn't what it was. Okay, but this is my paraphrase of what he was saying. Painters in medieval time used to grind their own pigments down in their rather dark studios and create their paintings until someone created metal tubes to put paint into, so they could get out of the studio and out into the fields and actually paint trees and things instead of just still lives that they bring into their studio to keep the paint wet, And that was what came out of that was French Impressionism, which I guess was pretty neat at the time. And I think we're on a crux point here of a new art form that's coming out, and it's the CyberArt concept. So that was that. Another guy that impressed me very much that morning was named Michael Naimark, who's a graphic artist and has done video tours of, I think it was Denver and some place in I didn't write this down. Oh, it was Aspen, thank you. Give them a here. I was going to refer to this. This is actually the program to it, and anyone's welcome to take a look. But this will tell us some of the background. There's a guy named William Bricken there too, who is a very interesting fellow. It's Colin's father, who works at the HIT Lab, who is the principal scientist there, and he gave a vision of virtual reality in the modern world. He did a very good job too. Let's say thank you to him. Michael Naimark did the Paris interactive video discs is what it was. Movie map: Aspen from the street, Paris from the sidewalk, San Francisco from the air, and Karlsruhe, Germany from rail. But the ones we saw as far as Karlsruhe, Germany, was you'd have a guy in front of a big screen TV who had a lever and pedals, and you'd start. They have a rail system to go all through the town. And you start and you go forward, and when you get to a cross street, it says you want to go right, left, or straight ahead. So you pop left, and you can tour the whole thing. You can tour the city. Through their rail system, you can go up to 300 times normal speed. So you can tour it very quickly. And it's all in very high res. Looked cool, looked like a lot of fun. And so That's a nice idea. The thing that really knocked me out is he had an installation in San Francisco where there was a living room set up within like a museum or a presentation space that had a couch and pictures on the wall and vases and a TV and an ironing board and your typical, you know, studio apartment kind of thing. It had people in it doing typical studio apartment types of things, watching TV, ironing, doing these types of things. However, in the center of the room was a movie camera on a turntable that was taking a picture as all this stuff was going on right around in the circle. Well, what they did with this room is they painted everything white without moving anything. So the vases on the table were still there, but painted white. The pictures were painted white. The TV was painted white. The ironing board, the couch, they were all spray painted white. Then they took a movie projector, put it in the center of the room, synced it up with where the movie camera was, and the room became a screen. And so it projected, it mapped onto the couch's colors. It mapped onto the vases and the flowers, and the TV went static when it went past. Okay, or you could see what was on TV. The thing was that everything was in the room as when it was filmed, except the people. With the people gone, they were flat up against the couch. They were, you know, up in the ironing type of thing. There was no actual people there. So you could see a normal room look just like this, except with these people mapped onto the walls, doing normal things. It's a knockout. It's going, oh, geez. You know, as they were painting the room white in this picture, you had to film this. Well, what are they doing? And then started this thing up, and it just traveled. It was like, wow. That was when I started to lose my mind, which led to this right here. Okay, now let's go on. Right? There was Joel they're working on a laser tracking. I shouldn't be saying your thing, but I'll see what I got out of it. We're working on a test. Okay. That's why I haven't gone to school for a long time. They're working on a retinal tracker, a retinal scanner that scans a laser that will put a picture actually painted onto your eye with a laser. It sounds scary, huh? But you get the full, eventually we're looking to get full permanent, yeah, you get one scene. Choosing very carefully. That would be interesting. But the future of it, I assume, again, just to jump ahead and then work our way back, the future of it, and this is what I thought, isn't there a chip that is going to have this laser in it that will scan?
We're trying to miniaturize everything so that it'll fit on your pair of not too big sunglasses type glasses. Maybe slightly bigger arms on this.
I mean, you got major HD TV right up close and personal.
Better than HD TV resolution.
That's the key. Better than HD TV resolution at your eyes. And now attach that with 3D sound. Attach that with
your jogging shorts.
That's
car and drive across.
That's one of the applications.
Not driving, piloting a plane.
If you have it transparent except for data readout, then you see your speedometer or whatever. You know, there are multiple applications for this technology.
How far away do you think that is for like a fighter aircraft where if you're enclosed and you're simply looking through a small pair of glasses?
About 5 years ago.
5 years ago, I mean, implemented, I realize that. I saw something large ago, but in
it
terms
wasn't
of
the same
being
technology.
implemented so you can drive, it's already in the planes now. So
Yeah, the Super Cockpit project is where the guy that started the HIT lab came from.
I see.
It doesn't use lasers, but it uses tiny cathode ray
It's still a
tubes.
small unit that he wears. It's not like a big.
It's not that small. That's why it's not that popular.
That's what I was
It's
curious
big
about.
and expensive.
Small sunglasses.
So where how far away the sunglasses idea is?
Depends who writes the checks, how many zeros they have on them.
Okay, depending on research.
I would say 5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years. Would that be for actual instancization of them, or would it be for public?
Is that the silo stage?
Yeah, is that silo stage or? like make
Silo would be towards the end of that.
Okay, for like 10-ish years. But
Silo's still around.
Coming, no matter what, like
Silo will be solo.
now remember, 10 years ago, what we were doing, as compared to what we're doing now, it's different, but it's not that different. It's not that different where you put all this stuff on. The world is rapidly changing, and it's being humans here, we sort of have a responsibility to.
I think in 10 years, there'll be some very effective small head mount display, of which I would say this is one of the better ways of doing it. There are other ways that if this doesn't work, it doesn't mean it's going to stop, something else will.
Right. Okay. And even farther out and more frightening is potentially direct biological. No? Good. No Microsofts, or just don't want to go?
I just don't.
For me. Okay, yeah.
The-
I'll pass.
A lot of research is being done in that, though, as far as a rehabilitative surgery and people who've had severed limbs and connecting prostheses back to them, to having their muscles control. So even though Brian mentions not to, there's going to be a lot of people. There will be. I think that this is really all temporary. This clothing for the senses metaphor to something that would perhaps be a direct neurological stimulation. But there's always going to be people that aren't going to want that, including myself. So.
Well, until you get your first taste of it.
Yeah.
Here's a simulation. But then, once you're wired, then that becomes really easy.
You just need to install electrodes inside your neck.
I think if ever done any A to D design, will probably appreciate that that's probably not going to happen in the next 10 years.
Digital design later.
Okay, well, that was a good one there. The other things having to do with virtual reality, I'll get into Craig Anderton's masterclass on sequencing next, which is more apropos to the name of this group. One of the things that was interesting as far as the data gloves, they had some force feedback technology with little air pistons that went up onto your fingers, and as you saw like two balls in a space in a volume region, you squeeze one ball and it gave you the force feedback of a harder ball. You squeeze the other ball and it gave you force feedback of a softer ball. So you can actually start to map feeling onto the virtual world, which is not really there. Or it is actually there, but not there. That's one of the hard parts about describing virtual reality. It's not really there yet. But in that session, there was a discussion on tensors, which are, it's tough having an expert audience, because I know that as soon as I hear
So your wife really going to believe that you're here after this?
Pardon me?
I mean, I know you've got the pictures, but will your wife relate the pictures?
Well, she didn't see the SIGGRAPH yet.
Oh, okay.
So she can watch television and believe it. What tensors are is little pieces that go into data gloves. Data gloves is your interface into virtual reality where you can see your hand essentially in the virtual space. And
They have the same thing that
right, the Nintendo Power Glove, which is something that we're planning on potentially making an interface to. Yeah, Bob's very excited about that. We've got code and we've got sources now for Power Gloves. It's very new. I bet that hasn't been recording at all because it has, because there's usually a red light flashing. Is there a red light flashing behind it? Not in the viewfinder.
There's a green light that says it's.
It says rec. Beauty. All right. Whatever.
And the lens got
WREC.
Well, okay. But
Tape
what
is
tensors
wrong.
are
Tape's wrong.
is grids of little impact pins, which are on your fingertips. And what that allows you to do is, as you sequence the grids, then you can reach down and feel across an edge, and the grids are activated one after another, and you get the sensation of touching an edge of something. And if you've got a raised letter X, for instance, you reach down and you press onto the letter X, this will pop in a X pattern just pop, 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 until you take your finger out of it. And you feel like you're actually feeling this raised patterns. So that's more sensation within virtual reality that was happening. That was interesting as well. Pardon?
That would have obvious impact or obvious application for Braille.
Right, right. That would be the virtual reality for the blind.
Are you able to, at some point, take off your glasses or whatever they are and see what's actually happening mechanically to like compare? Can you do that?
Well, yeah, you just take off your
Because
glasses.
that would probably open up the user's mind to what's really going on. I mean, firsthand.
As compared to
just explaining it. I mean, you can see. I mean, I'm understanding what's going on, but I imagine it'd be much different experiencing it because I've never dealt with that before. I've never experienced the virtual reality thing. So.
It's to be honest, it's not much to look at right now. It's sort of a real, very low res, and these things are all very much in the research phases. So
Are they gonna make it illegal eventually? You just say no to drugs?
depends on
reality. Just say no to VR.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, let's go into. I'll actually follow my notes. Yeah. now I can start. Okay. Craig Anderton had a master class on sequencing and he gave some very good tips. I was going to just say, oh, I know that, and not maintain a series of ignorance. And as soon as I started talking about each one of these tips, I said, wow, I didn't know that, and I had to write it down. I hate taking notes, so I was very bitter towards him. This one, he starts off easy. In a MIDI studio, to keep your mind straight, color code your cables, your MIDI cables, versus numbering them. Then you don't have to actually decipher the number on this side and this side. You can just say, okay, green, that goes to green here. Okay. Or everything goes in here. Green, yellow, red, whatever. Color code versus numbers on cables. That was a good idea. After you're in a MIDI studio, there's a lot of things that go wrong, and a lot of times you have to become very technical, and you don't, which is sort of gets you away from being artistic. So after you've figured out a MIDI problem, in order to get back into the creative aspect, he recommends watching a screensaver on a computer. If you have a computer, some patterns to go on, just sort of lose yourself in that. It seems to generate the kind of creativity that shifts you from analytical to creative. So that was a nice idea. He was talking about when you lay down tracks, don't edit while you're laying them down, just let them go. And versing along that way is setting up in advance several things. Like for instance, a sequence that's a test and tune sequence, something goes through each MIDI channel with a given note, like an A, B, 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 B. Remember, that way you get your levels are right, you know that everything's working, you know everything's in tune. And that's a simple sequence you have, and it's done every time you just start that. One of the exciting things I saw was a program change test sequence where you program in the first measure a given MIDI program change. In the second measure, you program to the program change number 2. So program 2, third measure, program number 3 for a given thing. And then you set up, you go on out to 128. You've got 128 measures, you've got 128 programs in your music. Then you go to another track and start recording on that track while the first track is playing. And as you hear a sound that you want for whatever you want, or the person that's in your studio that is working, the sound that they want, they just hit a note on a keyboard. And you look at it in a bar view, and you can see that in this measure something's recorded. And depending on what measure it is, that's what sound it was. And so it's on measure 13, well, that's sound 13. You say, okay, good. Well, we know that, you just take those out, it gives you a direct link of what's happening. that was a cool one. Well, he recommended doing all sequencing on one sequencer and one drum machine, so that you get really used to it completely, and then get it out once you're done, rather than having to deal with all the technical stuff at the same time. There's also, he has a studio that has a lot of different computers in, and a lot of different sequencing standards. And when people come over with sequences into a studio, he goes, oh, can you take this kind of sequence? Sure, pops it in and whips through it. Can you take this other kind? Yeah, pops it in and whips through it, and he amazes everyone with his facility with all these different sequencers. What he's done is he's set up keyboard macros that the same function is the same keystroke. So you only really need to know one set of functions in order to get the same type of responses from all those different sequencers. So that was interesting. Okay. Template sequences, where you set up prior a couple of tracks of like a standard rhythm, okay, and you have your channel assignments all done, and you've got like hats, and you've got kicks, and you've got all the different patches out, and then that gives you something to work with, and you can delete what you don't want and add different things, but at least you have a template for starting off without having to do that every time. He recommends reckless sequencing. Go ahead and if you're going to cut a section, put it over here, just do it instead of getting real close. Just do it, save before you do it, save off into different names. And then what you come up with will often be a surprise and something that has a little more interesting aspects to it. So that was cool. Okay, now the time traps. Tempo track variations as a humanizing aspect. Like for instance, he was talking about on your first verse, you have it at a given time. You go into your chorus. In your second verse, have it 1 beat per minute less. And there's a little bit of difference there between the different parts, and that can be heard. Now, another thing he does in order to make a gap before a start, like you go da da da, like a rest. What he does is he takes the tempo track and cuts right before to very slow, like you're at 120, cut it to 20 for just a second, and then go out. And so it slows down and hits it. And so you have time traps there, right in front of where you go. And that's, he played several instances where that was used. It was pretty neat. He was talking about to make percussive tracks more interesting, instead of using quantization all the way 100% every time, he found that if you, a good thing that worked for him was going to 16th notes to 80% quantization, where you don't get right on the note each time, but 80% of whatever you played in, closer to the note. And he took some really, he showed 3 or 4 different stages of one piece. There was a really hideous input, you know, and how it would sound directly quantized, and then with this way, and it was sounding more human, if that's what you're looking for in your sequences. And then he went through some of the digital audio editing things that people that are fortunate enough to be working on Macs with sound tools and the like, that can actually see and edit places. Boy, should have taken better notes on that one. You can recognize, he talked about how to get rid of sibilants, where well, I'll pass on that, I've forgotten. I'm sure somebody who's going, I have some sibilants I have to get rid of. Okay, and this is the way you get to Poobah records that I never got a chance to get to, and that's in my notes. Poobah. Okay, now, Bob Moog and Don Buchla were at one of these work groups, and what Bob Moog is working on right now is theremins. Does anyone know what a theremin is?
Yep, Star Trek.
Star Trek. Oh, okay. He's working
Good
on
vibration.
Good vibration. That's right.
My favorite one.
Okay, everyone knows MIDI. He's working on a MIDI theorem, which, when you consider that it's a continuous change of sounds, that normally if you make the changes slowly, you'll hear a stair-step sound. You know, like if you do your pitch bend, and it's not in a very high resolution, but etc. And that was a problem that he was having. What he found out was to get the controller change messages going faster than 160 times a second will smooth it out. And also within the product that is making the sound, if you smooth it right after the controller goes in, would also do it. Boy, see, this is why I wanted to talk about this last month on the Monday that I got back. It was totally fresh. But that was interesting anyway. Don Buchla was there, who was, he and Bob Moog were both given the honor of being called the inventor of voltage controlled synthesizers. But they were working at separate times and they both came up with this thing. What he's working on right now is alternate controllers, where he's got a couple of wands and he plays by hitting nothing. There's a sensor out about 6 feet. Which brings me to something even more interesting. Craig, you mind if I describe the MIDIBird?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I had the pleasure of being able to go and tour these gentlemen's facilities. And one of the things that I saw that knocked me out was a thing called a MIDIBird. The bird is a position sensor, position tracker that they use in virtual reality and other things to tell where something is. And it has 6 axes of freedom, of tracking, where it's right and left, front and back, up and down, twist that way, twist this way, and twist around this way. Each one of those 6 axes is mapped to a MIDI controller. So as you twist it this way, the note repeat rate goes faster and faster and faster, up to 30 times a second when turned all the way upside down. To what's your normal pitch?
Actually, almost it's about 80. 80 notes a second.
80 upside down?
It just really is normalized from 0 to 1. So I can crank that value as high as the tone module will.
Okay, so you have lots of option there.
Yeah.
So anyway, that gets your note repeat. If you go right and left, you get the keyboard. So you get higher notes up this way, lower notes down this way. Go front and back, you get different MIDI channels. So you have one sound here, one sound here, one sound here. So as you go through it, you have a whole playing. Up and down is volume. So if you drop it on the floor, it turns off. Forward is delay. Twisting is sustain. At this time, those can be mapped as required. I've asked Craig to demonstrate that here at a future NEMUS meeting, if anyone's interested. And I think we are. So it'll probably be February.
Well, I'd like to. Right now, it relies on the Silicon Graphics computer, which is this BD like a pickup track to bring it. But I was talking to Bob perhaps about building a small controller that would take the bird input to port the code to this other controller. Hopefully.
As that gets made, then we'll put it on hold. And also, I need to get you in touch with HOTS guys, Jimmy HOTS. There's a thing called that's another thing that I did down. There was a visit with a guy named Mihai Mandala, who wrote the manual for a controller called the HotzBox, which is made by a guy named Jimmy HOTS. It works on an Atari computer system, takes any MIDI input, and it has algorithms inside that will bring out any key that you want. So you're always hitting the right note, the right scale and the right notes for wherever you're at. And there are hundreds of these scales in there, and you can change it by program change messages. So a sequencer can go out while you're playing with a bird, sending it in, and you can have all these notes are actually the right notes. You can't hit a wrong note with this, and that seems to extend that capability as compared to just chromatic. So those are things that are potentially to happen. All right. It's okay. Band shift reality was brought up, where you have a visual spectrum, and that's what normally is in VR. But they were thinking of shifting the visual band of like an insect up to visual reality. And band shift reality is also called like BS reality. So, Brett Leonard was there who did the Lawnmower Man, and that had really mixed reviews for some of the social implications and aspects that they brought up. And their next movie is going to be called The Immortals, which is a movie based on Rudy Rucker's Software. But I don't know who's read. That's a good book. Okay, something else. There's a band called The Cuckoo in San Francisco who built all their own MIDI equipment, and they play like 4 girls, and they built them out of xylophones. And they have lots of different MIDI things. One of the things they have is a MIDI ball that they throw out into the audience that's hooked up so that when you hit it, it triggers a sample on the stage. And so as they were hitting it, they opened for a Grateful Dead concert. And the audience was playing with these things beforehand. Near the end of the series of samples, they started to play samples of Jerry Garcia's lyrics. And so a line came out, the crowd went crazy. Eventually they made the connection between the ball and the lyrics, and they thought that Jerry Garcia was in the ball. So they grabbed the ball and held it down, and nothing happened. They pulled it up and it started again. So that was interesting. Linda Jacobson is the manager of that, and we'll see if she can come up with something. Okay, there's a couple other things. There was a neat party on Halloween night where Don Buchla played with this stuff. There's a didgeridoo as well. His wife was playing a didgeridoo, which is an Australian very irritating instrument. As he was making the ding dings, there was this very, very irritating. So one thing that they had at that party was a little side room where Virgin Games was showing a new CD-ROM game called 7DEC92, which knocked me out, and I've been waiting for it to come out, and they're late with it. It should be out right now. It's being advertised now, but I guess they run into some problems. What this is on an IBM computer. You have 3D Studio is a program by Autodesk that makes photorealistic pictures of whatever you want to make pictures of. And they did all of this video game in 3D Studio, and it's in a theater aspect, so they didn't have to map all the pixels above and below the screen. So that kept it easier to get it all onto the disk. But what it is, it's a mansion that you go through, and your cursor is a skeleton hand that turns to a harlequin mask on top of things that will transform. And this room, like there's a grand piano, and there's paintings on the wall, and there's plants, and there's a big staircase. And you go over the painting on the wall, and you click it, and the person in the painting goes like this kind of thing, and comes back. And you click the piano, and the skeleton starts playing, goes away. And there's also full motion video. It's a mystery that you basically get information. You go through this whole mansion. There's this beautiful rendering, and it has MIDI, full MIDI soundtrack, full sound card soundtrack, etc. Another thing that's neat about it is that it had board games scattered throughout the house. So you can go down and look on a table, and there's a game. You can stop and you can play this game within it. So you can just enjoy yourself.
Game within a game?
Game within a game. And that's another virtual reality aspect. So that's a real heavy buzzword. That blew me away. I was hoping to be able to get that by now. It's very, very, very cool. Okay, well, Sunday was a interesting day. They showed the Silicon Graphics Reality Engine machine, which is one of the strongest computers out. I don't know how to qualify that.
For graphics.
Pardon me?
For graphics.
Photographics?
For graphics.
For graphics. Strongest computers for graphics out. Photorealistic is amazing. Like, you remember the asteroid game Asteroids that you went bing, bing, bing? Well, this had an asteroids game built into it that looked like it was right out of Star Wars. They were flying and shooting these rocks like, it could have been a picture out into space type thing. And there was a programmer for that did visuals for Grateful Dead behind their stuff. And he played a song and did a whole video thing live, sort of like Laserium. That was a knockout, and people were saying, well, how much does that cost? Well, it comes as a screensaver and with this machine. And when I was at another meeting, we heard something, Mr. McCracken, the president of Silicon Graphics was talking about how I'm going to throw some words in 3.5 years, there's a factor of 10 in power and performance. So the things that the computers that cost this is going to be bad. Computers that cost $10,000 in 3.5 years will be down, or 7 years will be down to $1,000, etc. So basically, with the prices of things coming down. Another statistic I heard was in 5 years, and all these years, statistics are hell. In 5 years, computing power will be increasing 1,000%. And also in 5 years, interconnectivity between computers will be increasing 10,000% because of the fiber optic networks and things. So any information that's around will be very, very easily accessible and generally probably in personal digital assistance. Okay, well, moving on. That's about it for that. I got home here on Monday and it was a knockout.
Find out some more about I don't think paying attention at the beginning of the setup where there's MIDI controlling. It was a skeleton. Now, was that rendered? Or
it wasn't MIDI controlling. It was there was a MIDI soundtrack. It was a game. The skeleton was just a pre-programmed thing that just started up and went.
Was it rendered or was it?
It was rendered. Each frame was rendered in 3D Studio. Pardon me?
And it was pre-constructed, and you just flashed it at front.
Yeah.
Pseudo-virtual reality.
Pseudo-virtual reality.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Each thing does the same thing. And the full motion video, same too.
Quasi-pseudo.
Pseudo. Okay. To the one next thing, and then I'll turn it over to whatever I want to turn it. I talked to Craig Anderton today, and he has a couple of informations that he'd like to get out that'll be in the newsletter next month. One is a classified ad that Craig's having a mail order garage sale, MIDI gear, signal processors, drum machines, recording equipment, electronic components, etc. Sends self-addressed stamped envelope for complete listing to, and gives the address. So if anyone's interested in that, that would be up here. And another thing that I won't bore you with reading, he read my articles and John's article, and it inspired him to the point where he wrote an article for our newsletter for next month, and it's here as well. Now we'll go into the point where what's the future of this group potentially. The majority of the people here are new people, and the vision that I have for a group in our area that we may need is to get people with different foundations that have different visions of what the future is, to be able to get together and share those visions so that they can start to come together in a coherent view of the future that we can all make with everybody else's help. That's one of the things Colin said while I was there, is that I was saying that if I wasn't working at RAIN, I would love to work at the HIT Lab because that's the kind of stuff I'm very interested in. And he said, well, what you're doing there is important because we're all going to the same goal. And that made me feel good. And I was thinking that a way to realize this goal would be get the experts in the field to get together, and also the people who aren't experts in the field. 100 gurus and 100 acolytes for a total of 100 people would be really good. Where you have teachers and you have learners and they're the same people. It has a real chance of growing too, right? Tonight there's a Microsoft, I'm telling you late because it's over now. Microsoft, the Audio Engineering Society is having a meeting tonight at Microsoft in the Multimedia Lab there, and all the information is, they're showing their new Microsoft stuff, the Microsoft Multimedia things. And I've got someone that went over there to tell them about this group. So next month, they had 25 of the newsletters to hand out over there. So next month, hopefully we'll get an influx of that group. And I think through word of mouth as well, we'll be able to bring in a lot of people that want to learn and want to teach. Another thing that I proposed, as far as the group goes, up to this point, there's been a $20 dues per year to cover like mailing and things. I propose we don't need that because right now we have corporate sponsorship, a couple of ways. Rain pays for duplication and postage on the newsletters, and we get the room for free. So there's no reason for people not to get the newsletter because they didn't pay $20. And if people want to pay $20, find out some of the work of some of the other people that are in here and buy it. And then we can feed ourselves that way. If the group finds that we need money for something, then we can go out after a period of time and have a performance. There are lots of potentials for that, and that has compelling content within it and demonstrates the technology. And potentially a lot of power there with like a burden with each of our specialties. We can get a lot out of that. And seeing something maybe in summertime, potentially. We've got, I called Craig, I talked to Dominic Milano, who's the chair of CyberArts down there, and he was really excited about the potentials that are in groups that are growing off of what they did. And I'd also, by the way, recommend going to it next year. And there's a book of the first 2 years called CyberArts that goes into a lot of that. It has the first 2 years workshops, authors in here, and story. Like here's the story on 3D audio. And one of the nice things about this book is it's in hypertext, which is sort of the way that I talk, jump from place to place very rapidly. But there's highlighted, bolded words in here that are jargon and buzzwords that are taken out to the margin and defined. And in your own field, they're sort of dull. You know, like MIDI has a whole column that says, yeah, I know what MIDI is, but I don't know what a lot of the other things are in a lot of the other fields. And so this was a very educational book for that. So I recommend that to everybody for what it gets to. I guess Einer's been trying to buy it for a long time, and Tower's continues to sell out of them, so they're popular. That's a very good resource. So, to continue, let's make this interactive. Who's the publisher? The publisher is. That's a good question. I had is Miller Freeman. And I'll leave this out for people to look at too. What does anybody think? Does it sound like a good idea? Sir?
I like the idea of being able to, like, I've got a question maybe about MIDI or something. I don't have, if I go to a music store, chances are 9 times out of 10 the guy's not going to know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to be able to answer the question. If I come to something like this and pose a problem that I'm having with MIDI, if somebody here doesn't have the answer, maybe they will be able to direct me someplace where I can find it. That's one of the frustrating things about being in
newer technology.
Yeah, newer technology.
Where the salesmen know just enough to sell the product and then.
For example, I just got I've never messed around with bulletin board before. I just finally got a motor installed at my computer. And it's taken me 3 weeks just to kind of blindly find my way around looking for what I want to find, because the people that I bought it from, frankly, weren't interested in you know, well, read the manual, it's in the manual. Oh, I printed out the manual and I went through the manual and it really didn't tell me what I wanted to know, or if it did so in jargon that I didn't fully understand.
They didn't have the hypertext pulled out.
Right. Yeah, but I can see potential in that. I think it was one of the things, first time I filled out that little questionnaire, there was a questionnaire that NEMUS put out, and well, they've been putting it out continually, but one of the things that I put down in my first questionnaire that I was going to turn in, but I lost it, was that I would like to see some kind of symposiums or some kind of way to direct questions related to music and electronic music. Somebody can walk in and say, hey, I want to find out about this.
Basically information resource?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see
SIG groups within a SIG group.
Okay. Well, I'm looking to hopefully, along with that, have some, as well as the specific questions answered, have some broadening where how can these things work with the graphics and things, or whatever. Sure. And my main point is, if I knew what was going to happen, I wouldn't have to do this. Because one of the keys is that we all are relative. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But we're all relatively isolated in our own fields, and I don't know what will happen when you have a lot of different fields in a room.
Yeah, when you put Elton John in with somebody who's into programming an Elton John show,
then you get Elton John in an Elton John show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then that pulls it out. We've been in contact with a lot of people who are willing to support whatever we come up with, and that's going to be it. Anybody else? Bob, go ahead. Bob has a lot to say. Will you take over for a while?
I don't want to take over. There's a couple things that I've been just almost exploding the last couple of weeks because bigger and bigger opportunities keep popping up every day, and I don't even know what to say really. But the whole idea of having performance is what really excites me the most right now, because a lot of the people that I've been working with and talking to are sort of at the point now where it's time to start showing some of this stuff off. And God, I can't tell you how many people there's, people like Craig that have the bird, and so many different creative uses of that. It's a whole new medium to work in. And I can imagine putting this thing all over my body, just dancing around on stage, converting all this motion into
lights,
audio, and lights, and video, and all that. The whole idea of interactive performances between the performer and the audience really intrigues me too. And trying to work with biofeedback or these MIDIBird controllers or that kind of stuff, where the audience isn't just sort of a passive observer of the performance, but they're actually a part of it. And there's been some experimental stuff happening with that, and I've been talking to some people doing that, and real exciting stuff. A good friend of mine is he's the head engineer at JBL, and his best buddy is Scott Page, who's a session sax player and toured Pink Floyd and that kind of thing. And they just did the huge multimedia show for the, what was the name of that computer conference?
For COMDEX. Let me break in and describe that show just a little bit, because I've got a flyer from it.
Yeah, before he describes it, let me just say that Steve is a great friend of mine, and I told him about this group and what we're doing, he got really fired up. So what Steve's going to tell you about, it's possible we could bring all that up here and work that into our performance. And, through RAIN, because we're a pro audio company, we're tapped into a lot of the very high profile people out there. We can bring people up that, first of all, sell the show, but get a lot of attention, get a lot of international attention, and really make this fly. It's not just a bunch of nerds in their garages. It's really do something big.
Even though grunge took off pretty well from nerds in their garages. What they call this was called the Grand Scientific Musical Theater, and it starred John Anderson of Yes, Graham Nash, John Entwistle, Todd Rundgren, let's see, Tower of Power, Alan Parsons, people from Steely Dan, Pink Floyd, Traveling Wilburys. The people that did the show was IBM, Silicon Graphics, Pacific Data Images. A lot of really powerful stuff. And Steve Bartlett, who's talking about, developed a 24?
It's a 3D audio thing that I need to get Steve and Brian talking. He's got some thing he developed at home. It's a 3D audio thing. We had 24 JBL drivers. I'm not sure how they're distributed. But he was saying it just blew everybody's socks off.
You can get a sound from me.
I mean, it seems to me that, if you've got 24 speakers and everything, yeah, you should be able to use some sort of three-dimensional space. I'm not really sure what.
Where's the trick there, in other words?
Localization of the sounds is the real trick.
And they recorded that for an HBO special as well.
Yeah, they recorded it all digitally, every track. We're going to mix it down. They had lots of IH video cameras out there, and a huge HBO special on this. And that's sort of the level of technology and people that we actually have available to work with. And obviously we're very excited about this. Just today I talked to
that guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
Roger Nichols, after you. And
Roger Nichols, Steely Dan.
Is the producer for Steely Dan for many years. He's doing a lot of stuff with other bands now. But he wants us to, have you heard of a Wendel Jr., which is an old drum sample player that he did. He's got like 50 nanosecond response time. It's really good. He wants us to bring that back. And
We use it on our album.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to probably put MIDI in it now and sort of modernize it. And here's another person that if we want to do the show, we'll bring Roger up, who's a really good friend, and have him actually engineer it.
That would be interesting.
So I'm just trying to, sort of entice people into getting involved in this idea of having a performance. And a couple other guys that I want to bring down here are the guys that do all the big shows for Disney and Universal Studios, and then these really reenact a scene out of a movie, and Jeeps exploding and all this kind of stuff. And they're really excited about the idea that these types of groups are forming. They're going to come down. And they're tapped into a lot of really exciting. There's actually Craig sent me an email that said there's a symposium that's going to happen at the University of Victoria in January and February with people like Marvin Minsky and Roman Gibson. And I forget who else. I was blown away.
Jared Miner.
Yeah. And anyway, so I immediately sent it up to these guys up there thinking, wow, they'd be into this, and I found out they're one of the sponsors of the show. And so there's a real core group of people, and we're all doing the same thing, we're all excited about the same things, we all have the same goals and fantasies, and the whole trick now is to get everybody together.
Instantiate.
Yeah.
Is this concept. And the trick is also that what we do individually is, I don't know if I've ever seen a collective thing work, because all sorts of things get in the way, it always seems to break. But it's getting to the point where we can't really afford breakage anymore because things are happening way fast. We need to sort of look out for the information needs of the people around us.
Yeah. Another thing that I just personally I've been learning lately is when I first started getting really excited and things were starting to happen, I was trying to really push things and make them happen, and I tended to get in the way. And what I'm finding now is just to let things happen, and they usually happen bigger than you could ever imagine anyway. And so I don't want to try to make this stuff happen right away or try to make a big performance. I want to let it happen.
If you dig a channel for water to go down, you get a channel that deep. But if you let the river make it, horrible metaphors. Anyone that hates metaphors, just hit me afterwards, please. So those are the things that just living will potentially bring us. Next month, there's going to be a lot of people that I talked to that couldn't make it here tonight that will be here that have their own specializations. And this can be the start of something that could go anywhere. And actually, one of the goals is to let it get out of control and to go nationwide. This is a little flame, if we work, this is a flame from CyberArts in Pasadena. I talked to Dominic, Milano, who's the chair. I think I said this before, but I talked to him today, and he was really excited that it was starting to happen. And I'm getting up onto some networks, trying to spread it through the boards too. And it's the right time of the world, and we want to make it. So, who wants to be guest speaker next month? Don't all jump up at once.
Well, there's a possible, I've been talking to Craig might be coming up, if possible.
By next month? He wants to come up.
Yeah, we'll do that for about 10 reasons now.
Yeah, all he wants to do, well, shall we, we'll find out within the next 2 weeks who's going to be the guest speaker, and it could be Craig Anderton. That would be nice, a nice thing to have people.
It's been a long time since he's spoken.
Yeah, that's when I first met him, and really, he's a wonderful guy, and he just makes things happen. So that would be good. And another thing that's not out of line, not out of reality, is that Dominic Milano, being the publisher of Keyboard, the editor of Keyboard magazine, knows a few people.
Rick
like,
Wakeman.
Pardon?
Rick Wakeman.
Rick Wakeman, there you go. Or like Thomas Dolby, for instance. I don't see it outside of the realm of reality of Thomas Dolby coming up and talking to us. I'd like that. But that general level of people, I can visual. Pardon?
I think we need an auditorium.
Don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody. No, that's the direction.
I think we can get used to that.
There's an auditorium as well? Okay, and that's, yeah. One of the things that I'd like to see is that within about March or April, I'd like to see about 75 people in this group, at least. And I don't see why it can't be as far as a word of mouth type of thing. And if we start getting heavy hitters, we get more people. If we get more people, we get heavy hitters. Works that way.
Do you want to bring back all the antique names back on the mailing list?
Yes, absolutely. Especially since you don't have, since we.
Well, it's up to Rand. They're paying for it.
Well, actually, we just put it in the outgoing mail, so we're not even paying. As long as there's an ad in there. We got good equipment. It's okay.
There's one thing we can try, and that's for people that have email.
Yes.
Email the newsletter, and then make the actual mailing of it optional.
So have a list, at least the email stuff. That's a really good idea. And so.
That kind of graphics.
So far, we don't have much graphics, but we can have a text-based version of it, and then the graphics-based version.
So you want me to send you the list along with the paper then?
Yes. Yes, and we'll talk at length offline, figuring out how to do all this.
I could probably set up a special interest group on the Performing Artists Network for.
Does anyone know about Performing Artists Network? PAN. This is something that it's a bulletin board. It's like CompuServe. It costs a certain amount per hour to be on, but everybody's on it essentially. All the computer literate musicians and companies like the MIDI Manufacturers Association is on PAN. That's where they do all their dealings. And there's a synth forum up there, and there's concert booking dates that show who's on tour, where, at what time. There's classifieds and all that.
Is that the one that gives you a discount if you're subscribed to Keyboard? There's one that does.
I don't know.
There's no online discounts, but if you join as an associate of various groups, they'll waive membership fees.
And the membership fee has been like 100 and...
Well, that's way.
I know it's way, but it's been like
Some software gives it away free too. I know when I got Performer, then I got a free membership.
Okay. Well, it's a $150 value, you can say, that Bob can get anybody on that wants to be done. I would go on Bob. So that's some exciting things that are happening. Potentially, we can get a bulletin board for.
Piece with about that. Yeah. In fact,
But the reason I brought that up was back to the graphics idea, the database up there, put get files up there. Anything, I mean, if you guys haven't been up there and you're electronic musicians, there's so much stuff up there you can believe it. Just megs and megs and megs of samples and articles. Pen. It's like CompuServe, but it's for the sort of for the musical industry and professional audio industry.
When you say up here, you mean online?
Yeah.
On hard disk somewhere.
And just recently they got tapped into the internet too, so it's for speed limit. So then we haven't been able to get into it.
Yeah. So that's a fun thing. All these things are possibilities. We'll put a lot into newsletters.
Another thing I'd like is if maybe somebody that's connected with all this stuff could feed me stuff to put in the calendar, like, for example, that thing coming up in Victoria, all the kinds of things that we could put in the calendar about that would be interesting to people.
So that's the vision. Instantiate. This is my word of the day now. Instantiated. That's the vision instantiated. Whether it's going to hold beyond persistence of vision,
It's not like spontaneous thinking, spontaneous making busting on the scene or something.
That would be nice. Yeah, it's a flame. It could happen, and it just. I don't think we even have to do a lot of work yet. The only thing that we have to do at this point is show up next month, see what happens. If anyone wants to do things, if anyone feels moved to do things, which is probably the best motivator, rather than having someone say, well, Gordon, why don't you go and do thus and such, and then if anyone feels moved to do things that are going to help the group or want to bring information in, I would hope to have like a half hour or some, maybe when we introduce ourselves at the next meeting, bring in 2 or 3 amazing pieces of information that we've run across in the last month in our own fields. And then we all get a lot of information that way. And that can generate discussion in its own right. And the bigger the group gets, that could take all night. But then we could have another night for guest speakers. I don't know. That's the thing that evolution will have to take its course there.
And have a mundane, bureaucratic kind of thing?
Pardon me?
A mundane, bureaucratic.
I missed the first word.
Mundane.
No, before that. Can I make? Okay, that's what I missed.
Please.
Yes, you are recognized.
I think it would be very nice if we had a database of members, and in particular their interests and specializations. And then, for Bob, if he's got a question about modems, maybe look at this. I don't know, this person probably know that. Call them. And also for sort of cross work, there's a lot of projects I'm involved in. There are people that I need to work with, and I don't know who's going to like find.
That's why I like this, because I always take all the information out, but dump it in my other than
Okay, because what I'm hoping to do is maybe get the whatever database
equipment they have, and what their interests are.
Is that database available? And another thing to say is that one of the main pieces of information you have to give when and if you give the database is, do you want your name shared with anybody else? And that's definitely a privacy issue of work. It should be assumed that you don't until you say that you do. So if anyone wants to get in on this, that you won't be called constantly if you don't want to. I don't know how many people actually get called constantly after databases like this, but we'll see. So
it's never been a problem in the past when we've published.
Okay, so that's one of the things that
The only thing I need to figure out how to do is how to drag it into a word processor where I can manipulate it, because we don't want to show the address, just the name and the phone number.
and I've got tools to do that.
Maybe I'll just send you a file and
Sure, that's my job, actually. So, all right, any comments, suggestions?
What's this equipment for?
Yeah.
This is the give us a daily NEMUS stuff. This is your there every time. It didn't come for any specific.
It's our standard setup, so when somebody brings in stuff they've created.
Actually, yeah,
it's during the past.
that's a good point. I would like, Tony, we got a cassette deck here. Would you mind if I play one of your songs? Because I got a chance to hear it yesterday and it was really cool. So now's the time, let's plug it in. You want to take a quick, it's 9:19. I don't know who has to get up 4:45 in the morning. But,
I do.
we can cut for whoever needs to go or whoever wants to do anything. Is there anybody else who has any comments or anything? Is it cool to think we can do this, or is it, geez, this is sort of dull? Way cool. Okay, good. That's a good comment. I feel better. Anything else? Bob, you mean way cool? It's cool? Okay, good. Eventually we may evolve out of the classroom into the real world, you know. Okay, and feel free to network among ourselves, and this will be set up. Oh yeah. Okay. There's also a brand new Young Hammer CD that we got as a freebie.